What happens to a woman when the ground beneath her feet is stolen, and the only thing left to cling to is courage? The auctioneer's hammer struck against the wooden block with a sharp crack that echoed through Ash Hollow's square. To Adah Whitlo, it sounded like a coffin nail being driven. Her ranch, 60 acres of grazing land her late husband had sweated and bled for, was gone. Sold for pennies to the Northern Pacific Railway Company. Sold! Judge Silas Dorn bellowed from the podium, his jowls shaking with self-satisfaction. His gray whiskers twitched in the February wind as his small, predatory eyes locked on Adah. He tipped his head almost politely, but the curl of his lips told her he enjoyed watching her break. Adah's gloved hands clenched until the seams strained. Beside her, 12-year-old Finn pressed close, his thin shoulders shaking. The boy's eyes shone with unshed tears as he whispered, "That's our land. Pa worked that land." "Hush," Adah murmured, though her own throat burned. The townspeople shifted uneasily, some turning their backs, others staring at her with hollow acceptance. None dared to step in. Around the square, Dorn's hired guns, the copper wolves, waited like vultures. Their leader, McCready, a scarred brute with a pistol always near his hand, spat tobacco juice near Adah's boots. The message was clear. Judge Dorn descended with surprising grace for such a heavy man, his fine San Francisco coat brushing the muddy ground. He moved straight toward her, his steps slow and deliberate. "Mrs. Whitlo," he said, tipping his hat as if mocking respect. A shame to lose one's home, but perhaps arrangements could be made. Adah's spine stiffened. She knew what kind of arrangements Dorn meant. Widows had taken his protection before. They never came out whole. She lifted her chin. "I'd sooner lay with rattlesnakes." Dorn's smile never faltered, but his eyes chilled. "Pride is expensive, my dear. Winter is cruel, and boys get hungry. Are you sure you can manage?" "We'll manage." He leaned closer, his breath heavy with whiskey. "The sheriff has questions. Courthouse papers missing, seals tampered. Dangerous charges. Unless you cooperate, Adah's blood turned to ice." The proof of Dorn's land theft was hidden under her floorboards, papers he couldn't afford anyone to see. She grabbed Finn's hand. "Come, we're done here." Quote. But Sheriff Pike was already crossing the square, 2 deputies at his side. His badge glinted in the pale light. "Mrs. Whitlo, I'll need you to come with me." "On whose word?" "Official business," Pike said, his hand on his gun. "Best you come quiet." The crowd melted away. Neighbors she once called friends vanished into shops. Even Mrs. Morrison, who'd brought soup when Henry was dying, turned her back. Adah bent low to Finn's ear. "When I tell you to run, you take the mining road. Don't look back." He nodded, pale but determined. Pike stepped closer, "Ma'am." "Run!" Adah hissed, shoving Finn hard. The boy stumbled, then darted into the alley. At the same moment, she snatched a handful of dirt and flung it into Pike's face. He cursed, clawing at his eyes, and Adah bolted. A gunshot split the air. Boots thundered behind her. She hiked her skirts high, sprinting across frozen ground, lungs burning. She didn't dare look back. She veered toward the mining road. The storm that had threatened all day broke loose. Snow lashed sideways, blinding her. Hoofbeats pounded behind. Closer, closer. Adah tumbled down an embankment, hit the frozen creek, and forced herself up, though pain screamed through her shoulder. 3 riders crested the bank. McCready's scarred face led the pack. She ran along the creek bed, ice cracked beneath her boots. One rider's horse crashed through, screaming. Adah scrambled up the far side, the storm swallowing her tracks. Snow bit her face raw, her fingers numbed inside her gloves. But then, there, a crude marker post, half buried in white. Her husband had shown her once. A trapper's, shelter nearby. She stumbled toward a shadow against the storm. A lean-to of branches and stone. She shoved her way in, gasping, shivering, grateful for dry ground. "Don't move." The voice came from the darkness, deep and steady. A rifle aimed her way. Adah froze. A man stepped forward. Tall, lean, scarred. His eyes were gray as the storm outside. "I'm not armed," she said, breathless. "I just need shelter." He listened a long moment, then lowered the rifle. "How many following?" "3, maybe more." "My brother ran the other way." The man nodded. "Storm will hide him." Smart boy. His gaze dropped to her shoulder. Blood stained her coat. "You're hurt." Adah hadn't noticed until now. Pain rushed back in waves. The man set aside his rifle and moved closer. Up close, she saw the scars across his throat, the hard life written on his face. Yet his touch, as he unbuttoned her coat, was careful Caleb Hart. He said simply, "Seen you in town. Widow of the Whitlo place. You know me. Know of you." Dorn's had eyes on you for a while. He poured whiskey over her wound without warning. Adah bit back a scream, stars bursting behind her eyes. "Need stitching," Caleb said. "But first we deal with your hunters." Outside, men's voices carried in the storm. McCready barking orders. "They'll track me here." Adah whispered, "Let them try." Caleb's tone was flat, confident. The mountain takes men like them. Her heart pounded. She wasn't sure if she feared more the men outside, or the scarred stranger beside her. But for the first time since the gavel fell, she felt a spark of something she thought she'd lost. Hope. The storm howled outside like a living beast. Snow battered the crude walls of the shelter, and the voices of Dorn's men rose and fell in the distance. Adah pressed her back against the cold stone, clutching the bloodied handkerchief Caleb had given her. The embroidered cloth felt strangely out of place in such rough hands, and she wondered what story it carried. Caleb, crouched by the entrance, rifle steady, every muscle coiled tight. His gray eyes never left the storm. "They're circling," he murmured, "but the blizzard's cutting their sight to ribbons. They'll hole up soon. When it clears, they'll be back." Adah swallowed hard. "They think I have evidence." "They won't stop." Caleb's gaze flicked to her, sharp and searching. "Do you?" She hesitated, the weight of the truth pressing heavy on her chest. Then she nodded documents. Proof Dorn falsified land claims. Hidden under the floorboards. If I get them to a federal marshal, he's finished. Caleb's eyes narrowed, but he didn't look surprised. Risky thing, holding fire in your hands. "I thought if I showed the truth, someone would listen." Her voice cracked. "Now they'll kill me for it." He studied her a moment longer, then turned back to the storm. Maybe not minutes crawled by. The fire Caleb coaxed to life flickered weakly, its light catching the hollows of his scarred face. Adah couldn't stop staring. He was rough-hewn, dangerous, and yet when his hands touched her shoulder, they were steady, almost tender. "You were a soldier," she said softly, among other things. He tied off the stitches in her shoulder with practiced skill and red switch. She saw his body stiffen at the name. The massacre was whispered about across the territory. Whole families wiped out, their homes burned. Caleb's jaw tightened. "My sister lived there. Mary. She and her little girl. I came back from a scouting job to find nothing but ashes. They called it raiders." It wasn't. Adah's heart clenched. "I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't change graves." His voice was flat, but beneath it lay a raw wound. Silence stretched, broken only by the wind. Adah shifted closer to the fire, her wet clothes steaming. Caleb stood, pulling rough blankets from his pack. "Get dry, or the cold will kill you quicker than Dorn's men." She hesitated, propriety battling survival. But survival won. She peeled away, soaked layers, wrapping herself in the scratchy wool. Caleb turned away, giving her privacy, his broad back lit by the firelight. For the first time since Henry's death, Adah felt the faintest stirring of safety. It startled her more than the storm outside. "You'll need a plan," Caleb said finally, his voice steady but low. "The judge won't stop, not till he's sure you're silenced. But with proof in your hands, you've got a chance." Adah pulled the blanket tighter, her mind racing. "And what about Finn? Your boy's smart. If he made it to Sister Eugenia's mission, he's safe for now. But Dorn's reach is long." Adah looked at Caleb, really looked. Scarred, guarded, dangerous. But his eyes held something else too. A resolve she recognized in herself. "Why help me?" she asked quietly. Caleb's gaze lingered on the fire. "Because I've seen men like Dorn win too many times. Because Red Switch deserves justice. And maybe because you remind me of someone who wouldn't bend, no matter the storm outside." McCready's voice cut through the blizzard, harsh and cruel. "She's in one of these shelters. Find her." Caleb rose, rifle in hand, his movements calm and sure. "Stay down. Whatever happens, don't make a sound." He slipped out into the snow like a shadow. Adah clutched the blanket to her chest, heart hammering. She strained to hear, every sound magnified by fear. Shouts, the crack of a rifle. Then silence, broken only by the storm. At last, Caleb returned, brushing snow from his coat. "They're pulling back. Storm's too much for them." His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with something fierce. Adah exhaled, shaking. Relief washed over her, but so did something else. An unspoken truth settling between them. They weren't just allies of necessity anymore. The storm had bound them together in ways words couldn't touch. Caleb added another stick to the fire. "Tomorrow we move. To the mission. To your brother." And then, his eyes met hers, steady and unflinching. "Then we take the fight to Dorn." For the first time, Adah felt it was possible. Maybe, just maybe, justice could be won. Dawn broke pale and cold over the Montana hills. The storm had passed, leaving a world buried in snow. Adah stood outside the shelter, the blanket still wrapped tight around her, watching the horizon as though Finn might appear at any moment. Caleb emerged behind her, rolling his shoulders, rifle slung across his back. "We head to Sister Eugenia's mission," he said. "Your brother will be there." "The nun won't let Dorn's men touch him." Adah's throat tightened at the thought of Finn's frightened face. She nodded. "Then, after that, the documents. We can't leave them in that house." "Not now," Caleb studied her a moment, gray eyes steady. "You're set on this fight." "Yes," Adah said with more conviction than she thought she had left. "Dorn took my land, my husband's work, and nearly my brother. If I don't stand, he wins, and too many others will fall with me." Caleb gave a single nod. "Then we stand together." They made their way through the snow-choked trails, Caleb guiding with a scout's surety. He showed Adah how to step in his footprints to hide their numbers, how to pause and listen for echoes of hooves in the canyons. Twice, distant riders passed, Dorn's men hunting. Twice, Caleb led her into gullies so narrow she could barely breathe. By midday, smoke rose through the cottonwoods. Sister Eugenia's mission stood like a beacon, small but proud. Inside, warmth and the smell of bread greeted them. And then Finn, rushing into Adah's arms. "I knew you'd come," the boy cried, his voice breaking. Adah held him tight, burying her face in his hair. He smelled of smoke and hay, but he was safe. Whole. Sister Eugenia fussed over Adah's shoulder, clucking with disapproval at Caleb's rough stitching. "You need real care, child," she scolded, rewrapping the wound with sure, gentle hands. As she worked, another figure rose from beside the fire, an elderly crow warrior with deep lines carved into his weathered face. "Running Bear!" Caleb greeted, inclining his head. The old man studied Adah with dark, knowing eyes Dorn's wolves search everywhere. "They say you stole from the government. They offer much gold for your name," Adah straightened, clutching Finn close. "I stole nothing, but I have proof Dorn has. Proof enough to bring him down." Running Bear reached into his pack and drew out a worn leather folder. He opened it, showing papers inked with government seals. Treaty maps, ledgers, records of land stolen piece by piece. "My people keep our own truth." "We knew one day it would be needed." Adah's breath caught. "With what I have, this will end him." Caleb leaned forward, his jaw set, "If it reaches the right hands." "There's a federal investigator in Billings, Sam Morrison. He's been sniffing around waiting for proof. We get these to him, Dorn falls." Just then, the mission door opened. Deputy Lyle stepped inside, alone, snow clinging to his coat. He looked younger than his years, nervous but determined. Slowly, he unpinned his badge and set it on the table. "I won't serve Dorn another day. I want to help." Suspicion filled the room, but Lyle's voice held steady. "There's a train coming in 3 days, carrying territorial records east. If your evidence gets on that train, Washington will see it before Dorn can bury it." Caleb's eyes sharpened cotton rift. Water stop. Only a handful of guards. Adah's heart raced. A chance. Dangerous, but a chance. "Then we ride for Cotton Rift." Finn's hand tightened in hers. "I want to come." Adah shook her head firm. "No, you stay here. I've risked you enough." The boy's jaw set stubbornly, so much like Henry's it made her ache. But she pulled him close, whispering, "Trust me, Finn. Please." That night, as plans were laid and supplies gathered, Adah found herself sitting by the fire beside Caleb. The flickering light cast shadows over his scars, softening the hardness of his face. "Why do this for me?" she asked. His eyes met hers, steady and unflinching, because men like Dorn don't stop unless someone makes them, because Red Switch deserves justice, and because— His voice caught, then steadied, "Because you remind me what it's like to fight for something that matters." The silence stretched, filled only by the crackle of the fire. Adah felt a warmth that had nothing to do with flame. For the first time since Henry's death, she felt seen, not as a widow, not as a victim, but as a woman still standing. When she finally lay down to rest, Finn curled safe beside her. She touched the embroidered handkerchief Caleb had given her. Such a small, fragile thing. And yet, it carried hope. Tomorrow would bring danger. Tomorrow they would ride for the train, for justice, for everything. But tonight, in the safety of the mission, Adah let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, the fight could be won, and she would not be fighting it alone.